What's up, guys? Chris Schwartz Edmiston here from Schwartz Edmiston Web Design. I am so excited to share this tutorial with you guys. We're going to be covering using index page sections, and we're positioning them in custom layouts using Flexbox. It's a really awesome effect. Over here you can see I have a summary block on the left. I have another index page section where I've put a header title, and then I just flip the layout over here, and again I have a summary block to the bottom right. So this is a really cool way to create really custom layouts. Obviously this functionality is not available right out of the box in Squarespace, but the cool thing is with the right CSS, this effect is actually really easy to achieve, and it actually doesn't take a lot of code. So we're going to be looking at how to create this layout, and I can't wait to show you guys. So before we jump into the actual tutorial, I want to give you guys a little demo because this is going to help you understand how we're going to be targeting sections and making the code repeatable in order to get our custom layouts. So here I have an index page, and I have three sections. I have section main blue, I have just a normal section that I called index, and I have another section that I called section 2 main blue. And my goal here is to change those two sections that have blue in their names. I want to change their backgrounds to blue. So you guys probably know, but if you jump into the settings for the page, whatever you call the page becomes the URL slug. So because I call this page section main blue, the URL then becomes section-main-blue, and whatever the URL slug is becomes the ID for that section. So if I inspect this first section and I come up to the section ID, you can see its ID is again section-main-blue. So this is really helpful understanding how the section pages are named and how it results in the code on the page is really important, because we can utilize this in order to really cut down on our code and give sections that we want to have the same styling the same code. You can see that this section ID is section-main-blue, and then our third section down here, the thing that they have in common is main-blue. So down here we can also see section 2-main-blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some code that says any section that has main-blue and its section ID is going to get this styling. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Go to your custom CSS. We're going to write section, open up some brackets. So any ID that contains, and to write contains, it's a star and an equal sign, and then you write in your phrase that your both sections contain. So in my case it's main-blue. So any section with an ID that contains main-blue, I'm going to give the following styling, and I'll just give it a background of blue, if I could spell it right. And there we go, background blue. So it's almost like each section has a class now, really. So it's a really cool way to give multiple sections the same styling. So you can see how this is going to come in handy in Flexbox. If I jump over to this example, this section and this section have the exact same width, and this section and this section have the exact same width. So instead of having to write styling for 4 sections on this page, I'm having to write styling for only 2 sections on this page. And you can see that it's only going to help as you add more and more sections on the page. Let's say we had like 8 of this type of layout. I'm writing 2 lines of code instead of having to target 8 sections individually. So this technique is really going to come in handy. And so hopefully that sort of sets the scene for what we're going to be jumping into. Alright, so now that we have that little demo, let's go ahead and get started on actually implementing this custom layout. So I have my website all set up with my page content that I want to have in it. I have this main hero with the image of this guy. I have then this section for women's outerwear that I want to be small on the left. And we just talked about how sections that are going to have similar styling have to contain a phrase unique to those sections. So for my small sections, I just have section 1 grid small. And so for this one at the bottom that's also going to be small, this is just called section 4 grid small. So pretty much the point there is just any section that you want to be small, make sure it has grid small in it, and any section that you want to be big, just make sure it has grid big in the title, in the slug URL. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we have to do is, right now our index page has a display of block, and we have to change its display from block to flex. But we only want it to happen for this index page. Let's say we add another index page that we want to just appear normally, stacked like this, and not have the layout be all wonky. We wouldn't want our code that we're writing for this one to affect that one. So how do we only have our code affect this index page? Well, if I hop into inspect and I go all the way up to index, so this main class equals index, this is the main index page that is housing all of our individual sections. So each index gets a unique data collection ID. So basically we can just say, okay, we want to only target the index with this data collection ID. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that data collection ID, and in our custom CSS I'm just going to say index and then open up some brackets and paste in that data collection ID. So now any code we put in here is only going to apply to this index page. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to set the display for this index page to flex. And that makes everything look really, really wonky. So the next thing that I'm going to do is inside of here, I'm also going to, well, first, we also have to put some vendor prefixes. So I'm going to put display WebKit flex. And the next thing that we have to do is assign a flex wrap of wrap. And so what this does is, it, instead of trying to fit every single section side by side in this parent container that is the index, it's now going to allow them to, depending on their width, stack on top of each other. So you can see the layout still looks horrible, but we're sort of getting closer to what we want our final look to be. So I'm just going to pop in a vendor prefix for this flex wrap property. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is, before this closing bracket, because we still want only this code applying to this index page, I'm going to add a .indexPage class. That should be a dot, and that should be capitalized I. And for the .indexPage, we're going to say width equals 100%. So now you can see that we're pretty much back to normal, how it looked under display block, which is good. What we're saying is, within this index, we want all of the index pages to be 100% width. And now we can give specific widths to sections where we have unique identifiers. I didn't explain that well. Bear with me. It's all going to make sense. Okay, so this is our small section that we want. We want it to take up 30% of the screen. So all we have to do is use our unique identifier. So any section with an ID that contains grid small, we want its width to be 30%. Cool, and we can see that it popped down, popped sideways, I guess, smaller to 30%. So that is exactly what we want. And now we can copy this and paste it below, and we're going to say any section with an ID of grid big, we want to be 70%. And if we save that, and let's just reload the frame so the images load normally. Awesome. We can now see we have the exact layout that we wanted. And look, we used what, like 17 lines of code. This is it. This is how you do it. So right now, if you look at the code in here, if I inspect it, the index page content is kind of, it's like crammed against the top. And you probably don't want that. I think it looks really good in this layout, so I would probably leave it. But let's say that you didn't want it like shoved in the upper right hand corner. You wanted it to be aligned in the center of the section. Well, all you have to do is write a little piece of code that says in our sections, we're going to say display flex. And you can see that our index page content now jumped to the middle, and we want to align items to the center. So all we said is for each of these index page sections, we want everything inside them to be aligned to the center. So that's how you do that. Right now it's in the very, very center of the page. Let's say you wanted it over here to the left. Just give the index page content a width of 100%. And so now you can see that it jumped to the left. It's no longer in the very center. You can now have it pretty much anywhere on the page. So if I centered this, it would go to the center. If I right aligned it, it would go all the way to the right. So just a little tip for you guys if you want to, change where your content is within that section. Just say section display flex, align items to the center, and then you can say .index page content. You want the width to be 100% so it can move around anywhere side to side in this section. So this method is responsive because we're using percentages for our widths. So if I jump into the tablet mode, you can see it still conforms to the smaller screen size. But once we get down to mobile, it starts to get really squished, and obviously the mobile view isn't designed for this kind of side-by-side layout. So how can we make this appear normally stacked in the mobile view, but then have this side-by-side layout in tablet and desktop view? Well, the easiest way to do this is to just wrap all the code that we have put so far in a min-width media query. So what we're going to do is say media screen and then open up some parentheses, and we're going to say min width colon 640 pixels. And we're going to do an opening bracket, delete the closing bracket, and put the closing bracket all the way at the bottom of the code, and hit save. And now when we go into tablet view, it's still side by side, but once we get down into mobile view, everything is returning to normal, how it would normally appear on mobile. So that's just a quick way to make it responsive on all screen sizes. So we looked at this very specific example where we have a 30% width section here and a 70% width section here, and then we have the same at the bottom. So that works great for this layout, but what if we want a different layout? What if we want a 30% section here and a 70% section here, but then we want a full width section in between, and then we want these bottom two sections to take up 50% of the screen? So let's look at some more complicated and complex layouts and see how we could handle those. So the first thing that I have to do, I want a full width section in between here. So I'm going to go back to my pages, and I'm going to add a new section. And again, because this one I want to be full width, I don't have to give it any specific naming convention. So I'll just call this one between section and start editing that. And I'll say this is full width. And I want that to be a second heading, and I want that to be centered. So I'm going to take this and drag it in between. And you can see, yeah, it is full width. I'm going to add a image banner here. And I guess I'll just make it the same as my hero image. I don't really have any other image to use right now. So this is super cool that we can have full width when you don't specify any like specific styling, it defaults to that 100% full width. And that's because in our code, if I go to design, advanced custom CSS, that's because we already specified that index pages should have a width of 100%, unless they get more specific instructions in their ID to make them different percentages. So that's actually like pretty cool. So we only have to specify specific, you know, naming conventions if we want to give it specific instructions. So again, down here, I want these sections to be 50%. So all I have to do is change to a naming convention that I can write custom code for in my custom CSS. So I'm going to change this naming convention. Again, the section ID gets its name from the URL slug, so it's important to change it down here. So we're going to say grid 50, or half, we'll say half, grid half. And I'll change it up here just so I have a visual reference. And you can see that messed up the styling because it no longer has the grid big, so it just defaults to 100% width. And we're now going to change this and give it grid half also. Okay, and if I save that, now all I have to do is write a custom section instruction over here, and we're going to say 50%, and this is going to be grid half. Awesome. So if I save that and reload the frame, now you can see we have a full width, we have a 30%, we have a 70%, we have another full width, and of course in the code you could give this more padding. But down here, again, we have the 50% layout and the 50% layout. So I just wanted to show you guys a little bit more advanced example, how you're not limited to one look per index page. You can go for as many different pages as you want. Just make sure that the names that you're giving these sections are unique and they're not conflicting with any other section. But I love that you only have to specify code for sections that you want to give unique looks to. If you just want a normal full width section in there, then just drop it in there and give it whatever naming convention you want. So this is a really dynamic way to achieve these really cool custom layouts. Alright guys, so that does it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, if you run into any issues, please reach out to me. I would love to help you guys. The other thing is, I love helping you guys out. I love releasing these tutorials, but the fact of the matter is it takes a ton of time, and I don't charge for them. I release them free. So I would really appreciate it if you guys went to my donate page and donated. I think the minimum on there is like $15, but you know, if you have to, like, go lower, $5, $10. There's a little field you can put in whatever value you want. $1, anything truly helps and will allow me to keep creating these tutorials, because again, it does take a lot of time, but I love helping you guys. I love creating these tutorials. So let me know if this helped. Please shoot me an email. This might be released on YouTube, so if it is on YouTube and you're watching right now, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comments below. All right, thank you guys so much, and go create some kick-ass Squarespace websites.